Hi, Jack. This is Ted Kuntz back in the USA. The roadblocks in Africa were more than I could deal with, and my poor mother was wondering when I would ever come home again. So I came home at least for a little while, let the pandemic cool off and a few things. Anyway, I'm really enjoying your show. I can't even begin to say how much sheer diversity you have in your guests. When I was traveling around Africa and coming back on the plane, I just listened to episode after episode, everything from economics to philosophy to health to physics even. Some of my favorite episodes for sure. Jack, couldn't thank you enough for being a part of that as well. I've got a book coming out, my Two-Wheeled Wanderer Dispatches, which I wrote for 2 years, a little more than monthly, are being published in a book. Pediment Publishing, a publishing company out of Portland, Oregon, has contracted to get this done, so I couldn't be happier. We're still in the proofing phase. The book is available for pre-order on the Pediment website. That's PEDIMENT publishing.com website. And the book should be released in early July if everything goes well. Jack, thanks again for having me on your show. Enjoy it very much. Wishing you the best.
Thanks for the update, Ted. That was Ted Kuntz, who I spoke to in episode 53 while he was cycling in Africa through COVID. So welcome to Podsongs. I'm Jack Stafford. I interview inspiring people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. I read an article recently online by a game designer who recognized QAnon as a type of reality game. Now, we've all heard of QAnon, but how many of us have actually read some of Q's posts? The original source. He was supposed to be an FBI whistleblower or something like that. I just presumed they were substantial posts, maybe some documents, but really they're just these kind of clues. Let me read you one. Identify symbolism. Owl Y. Which performers celebs supported Hillary Clinton during the election? Who performed during her rallies? What jewelry and or tattoos present? What does Hillary represent to them? What celebrities have owl and Y head symbols? Now, a QAnon devotee will tell you that's all written in code, but really they just trawl through the internet and find images related to those that support those statements. So it's a lot like a game. And my next guest should know he makes these games for a living. So let's get the expert insights from Reed Berkowitz. Your article's gone everywhere, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's done good. It's been a good little article.
Is it an example of how these things can take off? Also, some parallels to QAnon?
Well, let's just put it this way. I think the article got attention because of QAnon. I don't know if the methods of spreading are the same at all, but definitely, if QAnon hadn't stormed the Capitol, I think that my article would stay out of the spotlight. So
you wrote this article back on 30th of September, is that right?
Yes, I think so.
On Medium, which is for anyone who doesn't know, it's like an article web app. Is that right? Or?
Yeah, it's just a publishing platform where you can write articles and share them. And my own site is getting redesigned, so I started posting there in between.
Because I think we really need to go baby steps with all the terminology you're using. Many of my audience will not understand, so maybe you really could go from the basics. If you could explain it, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. What would you like to know first?
So you begin the article talking about alternate reality games and how you're a game designer. So what exactly is that?
What's an alternate reality game?
Yeah.
This is always kind of a hard question because the definition is a little loose, but I'll try to creep up on it. Basically, an alternate reality game is what I would call a subset of experience fiction, which are stories and games that are played in reality, that use reality as a medium. You don't watch them or listen to them, you experience them. So that includes live action role playing games, immersive theater, maybe augmented reality games, and alternate reality games. So alternate reality games have enough of a specific experience that their subcategory is kind of recognizable. And it basically, I can go through it and kind of describe the structure of it so that people can recognize it. It basically starts off with some mysterious, quote, rabbit holes that are spread around either online or in reality, and those can be anything that catches your eye. Past alternate reality games have used billboards, with something strange written on them, and then you go look them up. They can use items delivered to your door in real life. They can be things online that you find peculiar that you start researching. And eventually, when you go down the rabbit hole and start researching, you end up at a trailhead or a site that seems to have the majority of the story at it. And that's where you'll find puzzles, clues, a mystery, more of the meat of the story itself. And of course, the puzzles are very difficult, and you'll also simultaneously find a large community of people trying to solve the puzzles.
So
now, once that happens,
is it like a modern version of Cluedo or Murder Mystery?
It can be. It depends what the designers have in mind. I guess the big difference from a murder mystery is that they're going to happen in real life. So, for instance, people from the game might call your cell phone. They might, text you or email you. There's going to be live events. Solving the puzzles will lead to real world locations that you can go to and do things to activate more of the story. And the more that you discover, the more story is unlocked, the more events they are. And then at the end, there's usually not always, but sometimes a live world event where people gather, and it can be anything from a concert to a rally to a seminar. There's been all kinds of reveals at the end. But the big thing to recognize is that there are rabbit holes that lead you in. They can be quite large. Some of them have had over 10 million people in 75 different countries. There are a lot of events, large events sometimes. Sometimes up to 500,000 people might show up at events. And that it is both online and in reality. It is a game that you can play everywhere. Wow. So I guess that's the long explanation, but it's a little hard to get your head around if you haven't played them before.
So it's a big deal then.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some very successful, famous alternate reality games, and yet still it's kind of a niche gaming area.
Is it where the people dress up in the clothes as well? What's that called?
LARP, a live action role playing game.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's definitely an overlap there. I think, maybe the difference between a live action role playing game and actually, I'm not sure that there really is that much difference anymore, but there used to be. I mean, a live action role play game is literally where you went somewhere dressed in a costume with a foam sword, and there were rules, and you were playing out a role playing game. You were just doing it in real life, with spells and bashing each other with swords and running around in the woods. And an alternate reality game was something that started mostly on the computer and led to sort of real world things. But it wasn't an alternate reality. They both are games and stories that are happening in real life, as opposed to.
So when someone walked into the Capitol wearing a giant buffalo helmet, you must have thought the world's emerging here.
I did, yeah. I mean, I think that, even though QAnon uses a lot of the same techniques that an alternate reality game uses. The big difference is, well, one of the big differences, but the biggest, most important difference to us not playing is that they don't tell their participants that it is a game. So they think it is real. So, for instance, there may be 100 people or a 500,000 people dressed up as the Joker, at Comic-Con, but they understand, right, that this isn't, we're not really following the Joker and committing real crimes. This is for fun, right? And when people showed up at the, at the Capitol, they did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
So
when did you first realize that QAnon was using these techniques that you use?
Right away, as soon as I saw it, I think some people give me a little too much credit, but it is literally an alternate reality game in structure. It's not really, if you've designed one, you can look at it and say, yeah, okay, great, they're doing that, and it's not a game. It's more like the gamification of propaganda. They're using the same techniques, but they have a very different outcome. But yeah, it's not just me. A lot of alternate reality game developers also saw the same thing that I did, and I checked in with them, and yes, they have a very similar take on it. So
in the article, you talk about something called apophenia.
Yeah, I don't really know how to pronounce it. I pronounce it apophenia, but it's the tendency to find meaning in unrelated patterns. So you look up at the night sky and you might see a bear in the stars. Now, most apophenia that we experience, we understand that it is in a limbo state. If you are a scientist and you come up with a great hypothesis and you're positive that it's true and you have that aha, I've got it moment, you still have to test it out, right? You still have to go through the hard, rigorous process, designing an experiment, making sure that it's true, having other people peer review it, make sure the experiment is duplicatable by other people. But the moment when you get that eureka high of solving the problem is the same whether you're right or wrong, right? So an epiphany is a true realization or understanding that something is correct. An apopheny is the opposite. You're actually moving away from reality. It is delusion as revelation is what it was originally termed as. So, and it's not, scary or bad. It's just that you have to go through the next steps. You have to be able to sort reality from fantasy. But the aha moment that comes with it has a lot of dopamine. It's got a lot of, it's got a lot of power. And when you see a solution, you feel very connected to it. It gives you a sense of certainty when you arrive at it yourself. So that's why, for instance, the scientific process needs so much rigor, because people will just want to roll with it. They feel like they've got it, and that's what QAnon does differently than an alternate reality game. And for instance, I'm actually terrible at solving puzzles. So when I go on these boards and I enter an alternate reality game, I never solve any of the big puzzles. I'm not one of those guys, but I always think I am. Right, I'm always thinking, yes, that makes perfect sense, right? And then, of course, the puzzle turns out to be solved by somebody else, and I'm wrong. Okay, and I'm like, all right. Well, I still think my idea was good, but let's go ahead with that, and that was the right answer, right? So, and because it unlocks the next puzzle, it unlocks the next content. In QAnon, that doesn't happen, right? There is no puzzle, there's no real solution there. So people jump to a conclusion that feels great, and if it's a really good explanation, then that's the right answer. Whatever feels good to the most people is what's right. So you don't ever get to a point where you are solving the mystery. There's no real solution. You're just coming up with what would be the coolest or the weirdest, answer, right?
So what are the mechanics of it? Because how does it work on an actual basis? What does Q post, and what do the people post, and where do they post? And
Yeah, interesting. So Q used to drop clues in a message board called 4chan, and it's probably not. I mean, now I think a lot of people know what 4chan is, but it was kind of tucked away, a little corner of the internet, and by all I think by all accounts, people would say it wasn't the most user-friendly site in the world. Could get a little revolting, actually, if you dug around in there. But anyway, that's where Q chose to start posting, and there were other people posting as well. There were other people LARPing. There was FBI anon, there was CIA anon. So QAnon was just one more person that was playing a game, on this network. Then it switched to another image posting board for anonymous posting called 8chan. And that's where things, I think, got a little different. But basically, Q drops a text post which has clues in it, little teeny questions that lead you from one thing to another, and sometimes they're kind of creative writing assignments or thinking problems. So they're asking, I don't know how familiar you are with the Q theories,
no.
but the basic overarching Q theory is kind of like it's kind of basically just a hodgepodge demonization of everything that Trump hates. So it's like Trump is the hero, and the villains are Democrats and the media elite and scientists and Jews, and basically the hero Trump is infallible and can do no wrong and is amazing and is smart and is good and benevolent, and everybody else are literally drinking the blood of tortured children to get high. I mean, for fun, they're basically, as demonized as you can make another human being to the point of absurdity, and that includes, the Rothschilds and anybody who happens to get in the way, becomes a target. Hillary Clinton, obviously, but also the media elite. So Q will create clues that send people out into the internet to look for proof, to do research, that this conspiracy theory to control the world and hurt children is happening, and how it's happening and who's involved. So they'll say, hey, do you ever notice that a lot of people who support Hillary Clinton or in big media are wearing, owl jewelry or have horns on their, tattoos of like skulls or yak heads or so, anything with horns, throwing the hand horns all the time. And they're like, why don't you look and see how many people that we hate do that? And then and they'll say that just like the Masonics or a devil worshipping cult, like this is their signal to each other. They have to alert each other. That's part of the cult, right? So you'll see they don't care about you. They're gonna show these symbols, and you're gonna be shocked when you start looking. And sure enough, they go out on the internet looking at all these people that they hate, and you see them wearing exactly the things that Q has said that they're going to be wearing. Hundreds and hundreds of pictures of rock stars and media elite and, politicians wearing owls and, tattoos and being in music videos with occult symbolism and then it gets shared, it gets shown on YouTube, everybody is talking about the same thing. You're like, yeah, well, I don't know, rock stars always kind of do that. And they're like, yeah, but why do they do that? Why would you want to look like you're in a cult? Maybe the simplest explanation is you're in a cult. You ever think of that? And you're like, oh yeah, well that does kind of make sense. I mean, there's a lot of pictures here, And then you start, you kind of file it away. Maybe you don't believe it right away, but then the next posts come and they're like, okay, you thought that was bad. Take a look at this, right? And now you're going down another rabbit hole and all the information is only going in one direction until like you are sitting here with like, 1,000 pictures of people really, really looking like they're in a cult and everybody else is just ignoring it seemingly. And now you're like, but maybe they're in a cult. And you can't disprove it once you get that
one
out.
with the black eyes. Everyone had black eyes.
Everyone had black eye.
Black Eye Club, yeah, it was called.
Oh, all right, there you go. See,
yeah. So, but then you said people upvote so the conspiracy that's the idea that's the most popular gets the most upvotes is the one that kind of gets pushed through.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I wouldn't even say upvoting, but it gets passed around the most, right? So if you come up with a great theory, like, hey, you know what? Maybe JFK didn't die. Maybe he's going to be the vice president, and everybody loves that idea, right? Then the media influencers start picking it up. Then the YouTubers start picking up. Then the TikTok people start picking it up, and everyone gets really excited about this new theory. And that's why a lot of people don't understand that when it doesn't pan out, it's not that big of a deal because it's not Q who said it. Maybe it's a community organization, and so it's a theory and they're excited for it and they think it's real, but if it doesn't pan out, they just move on to one of the 10 or 12 other theories that are currently going around.
I guess it's always been like this. I mean, if you go back to when we were all living in villages and all the towns, the rumors that go around are the ones that kind of believable. Otherwise people wouldn't keep telling them.
Yeah, I don't even think that they're the most believable. I think that they're the most interesting.
Right.
Like the ones that they like the best.
Scandal.
That's where the component of selfishness, comes in here, of culpability. Even though I think that the people who are running Q are very, tricky, right? There's a certain level of culpability if you find yourself posting anti-Semitic, stuff around the internet, especially if you happen to be a Republican lawmaker who's talking about Jewish space lasers setting forest fires on purpose. You have got to know that you are doing something that hurts other people for your own, satisfaction, because it makes you feel better to think that there's this crazy, reason out there. You're living in a fictional world. That I'm sure that feels great to you, but if it's hurting others, then you are a real jerk.
I mean, it's got parallels with a pandemic now. It's kind of like a mental virus.
Absolutely. I think that we talked about apophenia and epiphany. Apophenia was originally a word created to describe pre-schizophrenic states. It's a way of delusional thinking that appears before full-on schizophrenia kicks in. And once you have that moment of unique clarity that comes with an apopheny, most people don't turn back. That's usually the stage at which they enter into a schizophrenic state. Now, I'm not saying that people who believe in Q are schizophrenic. I'm just saying that there's a lot of pleasure involved in that. There's a lot of, dopamine involved in that. And if you could believe that it was true, if you could live your life as if fiction were reality, it would be a better world in a way. You would have a lot more fun. Let's put it that way. That's why alternate reality games are so much fun, right? Because you can walk around.
The president's agreeing with you, and that's...
Yes, well, you almost have to convince QAnon adherents that there is a conspiracy theory in order to get them to stop believing conspiracy theories, because they're saying the president of the United States is telling me that the vote was stolen. The president of the United States is telling me that the Washington Post are a bunch of liars, and what they're telling me is not true. And every other Republican, lawmaker that goes along with that, which is a lot, reinforces that sense of reality, because these are not people that you would expect to lie to you. You trust them. If you, I mean, especially if they're your side, you know what I mean? Like, maybe if you're on the other side, you have a little bit more, skepticism. But if those are your people that you voted for, and they're telling you that, yeah, I got to tell you, these things are just not true. They're not true. Try OANN or try Newsmax. Right? That's where the truth lies. And those people are telling you the same thing, that the vote was stolen, that that the U.S. Post Office is trying to ruin the election. I mean, so you think, oh, these people are stupid, whatever. No, they're listening to the president of the United States, and you've got to convince them that every Republican lawmaker and the president of the United States is lying to them in order to get them out of this. And how do you do that? You sound just as crazy.
Yes.
They think you're crazy. They're like, you're telling me, oh, what, that the president of the United States and Republicans are all in some kind of, cult just to bring down the New York Times? Like, you're a nut. Get out of here. I'm going back to QAnon. That makes sense.
Oh. So do you know any QAnon? Have you spoken to them in person?
A few, yeah. And and some people that have been in Q and come out of Q. And yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think that there's, they're not stupid people. They're not mean people, they're trying to save the world, for God's sakes. You know what I mean? Like, some of them have some very noble feelings and are willing to risk a lot to do something that they believe in. And they're just being incredibly manipulated. And once you're in, it's super hard to back out. I mean, even faced with some overwhelming reality, I mean, it feels real right up to the minute that it doesn't. You know what I'm saying? So this guy stopped a van at gunpoint because he thought there were stolen ballots in there. Right? Now, it was just an air conditioning repairman. You know what I mean? But he had tracked him for days and was convinced. He was an ex-police officer, and he was sure. He was just sure, and he thought he was doing something that was going to expose the lies that he had been told, were real. And that takes a lot of guts. You know what I mean? I wish it took the same amount of critical reasoning as it took guts, but, he was not trying to hurt people, right? He was trying to save the country. And when you are, that, I think that's, if you imagine a book, right, where the good guy who does everything and gets away with it, if the good guy is actually the bad guy, it's terrifying, right? like people think, oh, the Joker, he's a bad guy, and that's not scary. What's scary is a bunch of good guys with the passion and conviction to give their lives to a cause that is literally not true.
Yeah. So is there a puppet master behind Q? Who is the Q? Because it's a small, not many people know how to design alternate reality games. No, I mean, do you have any ideas?
I do not, actually. I mean, there's a lot of good Q researchers out there who seem to be pretty sure they know, at least nominally who's behind it or who has been behind it. They kind of believe there's several groups that moved from game to game.
There was a guy called Jim Watkins who owns 8kun. His name came up a few times.
Yep, him and his Jim Watkins, and there's another Watkins that's attached to that. They come up a lot because they own the domain that hosts Q. And there's other reasons too, and I'm not really qualified to go into it. I mean, I think for me, the question isn't necessarily who's behind it. I mean, unless you have the power to stop them, right? Which I hope somebody does. But the question is, what kind of damage are they doing? Like I feel like, they're so tied into the media disinformation campaign that's going on in the United States that it's very hard to sort out, sort of who's official in that and who is kind of hijacking that for their own purposes, right? But in the end, it doesn't really matter, because you can look at, is somebody running Q? Yes, somebody is running Q because somebody posts it and somebody hosts it and somebody organizes it. So there's somebody who does this. And do they understand alternate reality gaming? Absolutely, they do. They even call out a lot of these things, like specifically, like they call their thing an alternate reality. At the bottom of my quote is a quote from Q calling it an alternate reality and using the term breadcrumbs. One of their rabbit holes is literally #follow the white rabbit. I mean, these people clearly have played these games and understand the mechanics and are alluding to that. I mean, they're as much as outright saying it, but clearly they have, they're toying with the idea. A lot of people feel that that this was a game that got hijacked by somebody else. So, for instance, there's a lot of talk about other ARGs like Cicada, where they feel, which was a puzzle kind of alternate reality game, where people tried to draw players away from that to this one. It's very hard to know because the puppet master always has to stay hidden. That's part of the illusion, of the game, right? Is that you're playing a fictional character. If you weren't playing a fictional character, you could just come out and be like, "Hey, I'm Q, whatever, nice to meet you." But you got to stay behind the curtains. So what they think happened in Cicada, and this is supposition from my part, I don't do this kind of research, but what they think happened, and this I do know, can happen because I've done it myself. But since the puppet master is hidden, you can throw up clues that seem like they're from the game when they're not, right? So if you're solving clues, it's like, hey, new Cicada puzzle, right? But it's not from Cicada. You don't know where it's from. So you start following those puzzles and they lead you off the original game, and you've hijacked the game by getting people to start solving your puzzles. And it's super easy to do in some ways because people, one, aren't expecting it, and two, there's no way to just come out of character and be like, no, that's not that. You don't want you don't want to do that. Be like, those aren't my puzzles. Stop, right? Because then you kind of blown the mat. It's like coming out on stage and saying like, I don't know. It's just so yeah. So yes, they do know about alternate reality gaming techniques. People do feel like they know who it is. The big question is whether it's tied into sort of like the foreign media disinformation campaign, whether it's connected legitimately through someone picking up a phone and saying, okay, now we got to get on this vaccine thing. Let's get everybody upset about that, or whether they're just looking at the media and seeing that happening and including it. You know what I mean? Wow. There's no way to know right now, which is going on.
So they could go into the anti-vaxxers as well.
Oh, they already have. Yeah, they've been all over that.
Because that was my last guest I was talking to about vaccines, and so that ties in. That's not a coincidence. It's part of the game.
Your last guest and I worked it all out.
Yeah. So has this changed the way you're designing games now? I mean, rather, because in your article, you said that it was a real stress to be the game designer because you have to be creative, you have to think things up. But now with this way, you give the creativity over to the players and they do a better job than you ever could.
Yeah, I think that Q has definitely solved some problems in alternate reality gaming in the sense that this thing can just kind of keep rolling because there's very little input from the game developers. But I don't think it would work without the huge media disinformation campaign that surrounds it. So even if it turns out, it's a couple guys who, whatever, yeah, sure. But then, when you get deplatformed, the president of the United States is going to get on and talk about Q for like 5 minutes in a press briefing and say how great they are. Right? You can't. That's like that's crazy, right? That's just like okay, yeah, it's just a couple guys. Come on, that is not what's happening here. If it is, then you have some kind of misinformation deity looking out for you that can just call up 20 Congress people and say, okay, Q got deplatformed again, so we're going to need some attention. Let's talk it up. Talk it up, everybody. Now, whether that's legit, whether that's Q calls them up and says that, or whether it's just they see it floundering and they're like, okay, we got to throw a bone to Q. But
so you're saying it wouldn't work without this? There are some bigger hands behind it.
Yeah, I mean, if half of the government weren't saying that the media, that the free press is the enemy of the people, I really don't think Q would survive.
Yeah,
because the truth is obvious.
Yeah.
So it's like oh yeah, Q really took off, and maybe it wasn't that much, maybe it really was only like tens of thousands of dollars, but really they're hooking into this massive disinformation propaganda thing that's going on. Like, I don't pretend to know who's behind it or what's doing it, but I know it's there. I know when the president of the United States is saying, you people are liars, this election was mine, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, not only is every press organization being attacked, but every press is also reporting that they're being attacked. So, okay, yeah, props to Q, but come on. It wouldn't work if just some guy on the internet was doing it alone, right? Mm-hmm. Because people, and I'll tell you why I know that, because people have been doing that. The Q is not the first, and it doesn't take off like this because,
So where will it go next then? I mean, it's gone as crazy. It's crazy already, but what could be next then?
Anything could be next. I mean, I think it all depends. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on what the characters do next, right? I mean, it depends what Trump does. If he starts a Patriot Party or starts his own social network, it could get revived. I mean, I could also see saying, okay, well, Q served its purpose. We're going to put it to bed, and good job, Q. Maybe some people will hang out there for a while, but it'll be kind of low-key, slow burner, and it might die. I mean, it all depends on how psychologically attached to it people get, and it all depends on whether whoever is doing it sees a purpose for it and wants to put in the effort to keep it alive, because they've shown that they can absolutely keep it going when Google delists it. And then, it gets kicked off of Reddit, and then YouTube, and then Twitter, and then everything. You know what I mean? TikTok, right? And they can still keep it going. And then the people who are hosting the domain name kick it off. And then Amazon takes its hosting away. It's like, and then all the apps get taken off the store, and it still persists because they had a use for it. They put in the effort. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. Is it worth keeping it alive? But what I do know is going to happen is that the gaming techniques that they used were too successful to be forgotten, and they will persist. They will keep going. And I have seen a lot of evidence of this kind of trained, delusional thinking persisting, even in organizations that demonize Q. So, for instance, some of the alt-right groups will look at Q and be like, someone will post, be like, oh, poor Q members must really be hurting right now, and they say, oh, screw those guys, they're nuts. We have to focus on the real problems. We can't, that was always a LARP. We always knew that, but then they go right back to trying to figure out the crazy conspiracy theory that's going to explain why Donald Trump lost. You know what I'm saying? They're doing the same thing, but they're demonizing Q in order to create the illusion that they're different from Q. But the same thing is happening. It's just without a main character, right? And a lot of people also don't know that Q has been silent for a long time. Q has not posted anything. I don't know, but since November or December.
Really?
So all this activity that's been going on has been without Q anyway.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, it makes those Facebook and Twitter bots look like like child's play. No, this is next level stuff, man.
Yeah, and it's completely surround. The idea is to completely surround people who are isolated from each other, which we all are thanks to COVID.
Right. Yeah.
With a hall of mirrors. So, for instance, I mean, just imagine this scenario. Okay, you go onto your Twitter feed, and you've got 200, 300 followers, um, and you're following maybe 500 people or something like that. And let's just imagine that all of them are not real. Okay,
Mhm.
which can easily happen. So, and when I say not real, I mean that they're either bots or they're sites that are controlled by bots. Okay, and you can do that with a push of a button. This is not even complicated, right? So everybody that you know and are talking to are all basically, maybe except for a handful of people, are false. And then those people are posting to you links that go to news sites where the articles are false, and they're on newspapers and organizations that are also false. And you go on to, and they bring you to the conspiracy theories and QAnons that are also false. And then the president of the United States and the Congress is also telling you that everything else except what you know is also false. It's basically America's being driven insane.
Yeah.
And is that a far-fetched scenario? No, it's literally happening. It's literally the way some people right now are living their lives. They are completely captured.
So what's
And they
next then?
they can't see a way out of it. And now we've got Parler, and we've got Gab, and we've got Telegram. We've got these places where you can literally construct a social media world that you never get to see the outside of. There's no reality at all except who you meet in person, and you can't even meet anybody because you're trapped in your house like I am.
And I have to write a song about this.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
I love your songs, by the way.
Oh, thanks. This one's a bit complicated, though. I mean, this is like a song. I need a song within a song within. I mean,
I know, right? You're gonna have to.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to embed a puzzle in it, or. But then again, you've got a lot of great source material. There's.
Maybe I just go into QAnon. So where do people?
You'll be careful because this song is gonna, is gonna end up like on the QAnon boards. They're gonna love this.
Jeez. So where do I don't want to even ask that where people talk about it, but don't want to give it any publicity because you might be just curious. There could be some young people listening to this and you get it sucked in. Yeah. But
no. The only reason I even mention 4chan and 8chan is because they're not there anymore.
Okay, right. But it's on the dark web, or is that something? Or these Parler?
I don't know if it's on the. I don't think there's any benefit for them being on the dark web, to be honest, because they're proselytizing. They're trying to get members. They want yoga moms, and they want teenagers. So they're going to be. They need to be on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. They don't want to be on the dark web.
Okay, so yeah, it wants to get into the. And Q was originally supposed to be an FBI, like, informant, or something like that. What was the original premise back to when it's first started?
Oh yeah, like all the other ones, Q was supposed to have Q clearance, which is a security clearance in the United States, and so Q is supposed to be a member with Q clearance, who drops clues of what he knows of this vast global conspiracy, and he is offering they, he, them, whatever, they are offering clues, to this vast conspiracy where, everybody you don't like is a child molester.
Why is that? Is that because the worst thing they could possibly think of is to molest children?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the worst thing I could think of, but it's like, I don't.
That's the number one insult in the.
I think that's good that's the number one insult, but definitely, I mean, I think you can go back to ancient times to Jewish blood libel, and Jews are supposed to be, mixing the blood of Christian children in their matzah to, for their ceremonies,
Mm.
and the witches did the same thing, and anybody that you persecute just has to be, unconscionably evil without remorse. And drinking the blood of children is pretty up there. And QAnon kind of adds a little, modern twist to it. They're like, oh, well, it's not blood because of magic. It's blood because of, adrenochrome, this chemical that is in your blood, that gets you high and keeps you alive, or or something like that. Now, it's interesting, but it's like it's a reboot, right? It's a reboot of Jewish blood libel. It's like, how can we make this interesting again? And there's all this stuff from popular culture that's got this adrenochrome stuff in it, so it lives in blood, it makes you crazy, and it just fits in with the demonic cult story, right? Now, adrenochrome is a real drug. It is in your blood, I guess, and it's harmless. It's just this. You can buy it for like $50. You can buy a jar of adrenochrome if you want it.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But unfortunately, there's what's called basically an information void about this, where it's such a useless drug in many ways that not a lot was written about it. Right. So you go Google it. You don't really find much because nobody cares about it. But what you do find is Hunter S. Thompson and a bunch of people talking about how that adrenochrome is the stuff that can only come from the adrenal glands of living people, and that it makes you so high you can go insane. Now, Thompson admitted that he made that up.
But he knew one or two things about getting high.
He did, but he also knew one or two things about lying his ass off. Excuse me, I'm sorry, the podcast, but he told Terry Gilliam, he was like, yeah, I made that up because it sounded really cool, right? Now, now a lot of people have since picked up on that as it kind of became like the weirdest drug in the world. That if you wanted to reference something that gets you really high, you might say adrenochrome. And and everybody would be like, oh yeah, I get that reference, but it's not real, right? It was all fictional. It was all based on lies. But if you do a search, you don't get any information on the real adrenochrome because nobody really was writing about that too much. But you do get information on the fictional adrenochrome. So when you do your Google search, you get that you see that it's this, everybody's telling you that it's this, amazingly weird, dangerous high, and that it only comes from, and then it fits perfectly into, not only do you murder children, drink their blood, you got to like torture them and extract the, adrenochrome from their living, terrified bodies. Right?
Hunter Thompson's got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, he does. That jerk. But who knew? I mean, how can you? I don't know. It's like they just go out looking for stuff, right? So yeah, but it's still, in the end, it's still the same old Jewish thing of you're drinking the blood of children. Clinton's drinking the blood of children. The media leader drinking the blood of children. The people who have a lot of money, rich people, all people that you don't have any access to, that you don't know, that already seem weird and that you kind of hate.
Well, Jeffrey Epstein and things like that didn't help, probably.
No, well, they didn't help. They didn't help the side, that knows that things like that happen occasionally, and that it's not necessarily part of a giant organized, cult. But yeah, child molesting happens. It's awful, and anybody would want to stop it. And the thing is that, I guess I would feel totally differently, right, if QAnon were helping, right? If even one child trafficking organization was like, oh, thank God for QAnon, right? I'd be like, okay, now this got a lot more complicated, right? But universally, they decry QAnon. They're like, this is hurting us. It's creating a fictional image of what this looks like, of what real people being hurt, trafficked, etc. People are not even coming forward because they now feel like they've got to be, harvested in order to feel like they're being abused or trafficked. This is like a common problem in fiction because the worlds are so different. So, for instance, when you see somebody drowning in a movie, they're thrashing their hands around and they're screaming, "Oh, oh, oh!" Right? When you become a lifeguard, you're trained to look for the real signs of drowning, which is people being absolutely silent with their heads barely above water, maybe even laughing because they're so nervous, and they're just concentrating all their effort on keeping their head above water. They're not even screaming. They're just and they just bloop, they just sink under the water, a kid especially, right? So the reality versus the fiction could cause huge problems. So the fact that, QAnon is saying, oh, this is what's happening, there's a satanic cult and all this stuff is terrible, because that's not really how, children get hurt. If you really want to help children, go into social work, go into forensics, go into something that has shown to be a proven help to kids, fund social networks, right?
Yeah.
Fund safety networks. Go out and help families know the actual signs. Q does not need your help. Right? He's not helping anybody or anything. So the goal, yes, you can't argue with the goal, but every legitimate organization that deals with this is begging them to stop, and that is enough for me.
Yeah. So do you think all the media is as much to blame for asking Donald Trump questions or covering it in any way? Should they've just been silent about it? Or?
No, I don't think that you can be silent about it, because Q's got the mic. These people have the mic, right? So if you are silent about it, then there's just one voice talking. You're not. They're spreading it. Yeah. They're already trying to spread it, and they have the biggest. They have the biggest microphone in the world. They've got the president of the United States to do it. So I think people need to be aware. They need to be inoculated. They need to know the techniques. They need to understand the difference between a game and manipulation, between propaganda and the news. They need to understand that there really are people who are trying to mess with your mind. This is happening. And do people need to believe me? No, they should be skeptical.
Yeah.
Right? They should be skeptical, and they should think, about what I'm saying. But whereas Q is an anonymous figure, right? You and I are here.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, I got a website. It's my name. Chat with me. It's an opinion, right? Yeah. I'm giving you an opinion based on experience, and that's really different, right?
Yeah. So you're in Portland, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, because I'm here in Italy. A lot of my guests are in America. I'm talking about America's problems, and it's like an alternative because we don't have them over here. It's like I'm talking this alternative reality over there that you guys having to deal with. I mean, and in Portland, then is you've had a lot of problems as well there with other groups. So yeah, you must feel like you're living in a hall of mirrors as well, no?
Not really so much, because I'm in the other Portland. I'm in Portland, Maine.
Oh, Portland, Maine. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, sorry.
No problem. So I've got it easy.
Shows my American geography. I didn't know there were two Portlands.
Yeah, we're the original. We're the original okay. Portland. And maybe just a teeny bit defensive about it.
Maybe you need to incorporate in the name. I mean, there was York and New York.
That's right. Yeah, old Portland. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So it's pretty quiet. It's pretty quiet over here.
Just online.
Yeah, and you know what? I have relatives in Portland, Oregon, and honestly, it's quiet there too. It's really a media distortion. I mean, they live right near the scene of all the BLM protests. They go there every night. It's fine. It's just it's literally like this one block in an enormous city, and it's nothing. It's literally, she does a my sister-in-law, often does podcasts and stuff of walking around the supposedly war-torn, streets of Portland, and it's hilarious. She's walking her dogs, and there's a little free concert going on, and there's some vendors, and you know what I mean. It's like this is what it's like, 99.9% of the time, except for like right around this one building at 2:00 in the morning. Right?
Oh, okay. So because within the National Guard were going in and things like that. But yeah. There's a weird sense of theater about it. Yeah.
I mean, not to say that BLM is theatrical, but in the presentation, there's and there's some great memes out there of the city of Portland as a whole, and then this little teeny red dot, and that's where the protests are. It's like, it's really you don't just wander by it. You know what I mean? You have to go there. You have to get in the car or take public transportation and head on down to, where the nightly protest is happening, and walk around at 1:00 in the morning. Right? You got to. It's not like a war-torn district. It's beautiful there, actually. So anyway, I don't know if that's relevant or keeping that in the podcast, but it's lovely. Go down there.
Okay.
Go to the
but not as nice
as
farmers
Maine. Market. Walk your dog.
Portland, Maine is nicer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Although not maybe not as friendly. Well, we like you, but you may it's chattier in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, well. All right, Reed. Well, I think this has been great.
Good lobsters. We got lobsters.
This has been really great. So you've certainly shed a light on another aspect of American culture for me. Yeah,
well, let's hope that where you are stays inoculated and sane. I know that it's been leaving the United States and heading to other countries, so keep an eye out.
Okay, yeah, for the upgraded version for the variant, no?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Get ready.
Okay. Well, thanks for drawing this to my attention.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. You're a great interviewer, and I can't wait to hear your musical interpretation.
Wish me luck. Yeah.
I do. Let me know.
Thanks, Reed.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
In unrelated things, you perceive a commonality. Building a breadcrumb trail away from reality. The players created, all looking to start. The journey is the point, there's no bigger plot. Apophenia is leading ya to join the dots and build the picture. Seems there are some scenes for ya, interpretations of the scriptures, leading ya, deceiving ya, seeing what you want to believe in. The right answers are the ones that resonate with most, that boost the group's objectives, they get the most kudos. The longer you play, the greater your role, the further we all go down the rabbit hole. Apophenia is leading ya to join the dots and build the picture. Seems there are some scenes for ya, interpretations of the scriptures, leading ya, deceiving ya, seeing what you want to believe in. The stage must be set for a new reality. Crumbs are easy to swallow, but will lead you astray. If you fall in with the rest, Don't believe all you see on the message boards. Apophenia is leading you to join the dots and build the picture. Scenes there are some scenes for you, interpretations of the scriptures, leading you, deceiving you, see what you want to believe in.
Thanks for tuning in. Educational episode, eh? You can check out more of Reed's articles on Medium. And if you like the song and you want to share that as well, you can get it from Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, or even better is to download it for $1 from Podsongs.com, because Spotify streaming, if you put it on all night, I can buy a cup of coffee. So it's really a 0.003 cents per stream. So it's infinitesimal. Because I've got to pay my musicians, Maurizio Sarnicola, Massimino Vodza, and my researcher, Dori Verbo, and keep the show growing. So if you could also review on your podcast app, give us some stars, subscribe, it all helps to grow the audience and grow the show. Alright, thanks again for tuning in. See you next time.